Mark lived alone in a small house on the edge of the quiet town, his daughters staying with their grandmother while he handled work and chores. The evening was calm, the sky painted in shades of orange and purple as the sun disappeared behind distant hills. Mark was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for a simple dinner, when a sudden knock echoed through the house. Sharp and unexpected, he paused, knife in hand, listening, his heart beating a little faster. Who could it be at this hour? He wondered aloud, glancing at the clock, which read almost 10 at night. Cautiously, he walked to the door, each step heavier than the last. When he opened it, his eyes widened in shock, for standing before him was a strange woman, unlike anyone he had ever seen. She wore nothing but torn cloth that barely covered her body, her skin faintly glowing under the moonlight. Almost iridescent, her hair was long and silver, flowing over her shoulders, and her eyes were large, shining with fear and confusion. Mark stepped back, unsure if he was awake or dreaming. I need help, she whispered, voice trembling and soft. Please, I have nowhere to go. Despite the surprise and fear, something in her gaze made him pause, a mix of desperation and honesty that reached deep inside him. Mark swallowed, feeling a rush of compassion. Come in, he said finally, his voice calm but firm. You can stay inside. She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if afraid someone might be following, then stepped carefully into the warm light of his home. Mark closed the door, locking it behind her, and handed her a thick blanket to cover herself. She wrapped it around her, shivering, and looked at him with a mixture of relief and gratitude. The room smelled of cooked vegetables and clean wood, a strange comfort to her tired senses. Mark offered her a cup of tea, and she sipped slowly, her hands delicate and cold. I'm Lyra, she finally said, her voice steadier now. I ran away from my world. They were hunting me. Mark frowned, unsure what to make of her words. Hunting you? What do you mean? Lyra looked down, shaking slightly. I belong to a planet far from here. Some people there want me captured, for reasons I cannot explain yet. Mark felt a chill, not from her words, but from the fear in her eyes, the urgency of her presence. He gestured to a chair. Sit. Tell me everything. I won't turn you away. She sat, glancing around as if checking for danger, her fingers trembling over the fabric of the blanket. The moonlight through the window highlighted strange patterns on her skin, faint lines that pulsed like circuits, almost alive. Mark noticed them but did not question. He had learned long ago that curiosity must wait when lives were at stake. Hours passed as they talked, sharing pieces of their lives. Mark speaking softly about his daughters and quiet town life. Lyra spoke cautiously, revealing glimpses of her world, cities floating above clouds, technology beyond human imagination, and dangers that seemed impossible to comprehend. Mark listened, fascinated and alarmed, his mind struggling to balance disbelief and reality. At one point he heard a soft rustle outside, a sound that did not belong to the wind or trees. Lyra stiffened, eyes widening. They are near, she whispered almost to herself. Mark's heart raced. Who is near? What do you mean? They are searching for me, she said, voice tight. If they find me here, I cannot survive. Mark looked outside the window. The night seemed still, but he sensed her fear was real. He made a decision, one that could change both of their lives. You will stay tonight. I will protect you. Lyra's eyes filled with relief, a small smile forming for the first time since she arrived. They moved quietly, setting up a small corner for her to rest. Blankets and cushions arranged for warmth and safety. Mark kept glancing at the door, listening, waiting, knowing that every creak could be danger approaching. The night stretched long, filled with whispers, shadows, and soft heartbeats. Mark could not sleep, his mind restless, thinking of his daughters, his life, and the mysterious alien woman who now shared his home. Lyra finally settled, her breathing slow and calm under the blanket, and Mark watched over her, feeling a strange mixture of fear, awe, and something unfamiliar, something like hope. Outside, the wind howled, carrying unknown sounds from the dark horizon, hints of danger that neither of them fully understood yet. But inside that small house, an unlikely bond had begun, a connection that would grow stronger with every challenge ahead. Mark realized that this night, this single act of letting a stranger in, might change everything he knew about life, courage, and humanity itself. Morning sunlight poured through the thin curtains, casting a soft glow across Mark's small living room. Lyra stirred under the blanket, stretching slowly, her silver hair catching the light. making it shimmer like liquid metal. Mark watched quietly, feeling a strange mix of awe and curiosity. He had expected fear or distrust, but Lyra's eyes held calmness, even trust, which surprised him. "Good morning," he said softly, trying not to startle her. "Sleep well?" Lyra nodded, voice gentle. "Yes, thank you." "For letting me stay." Mark offered her breakfast, a simple meal of bread, eggs, and tea, but she hesitated. Unsure how human food would taste, finally she took a small bite, nodding slightly in approval, and Mark smiled, feeling a small victory in such a strange situation. After eating, Lyra moved to a corner of the room, carefully inspecting the walls, the furniture, the windows, as if measuring every detail. Mark noticed her curiosity was not ordinary. Her eyes scanned for traps, weaknesses, and exits. "I need to understand this place," she said quietly. "I cannot stay here blindly." Mark nodded, sensing that she was not just a helpless stranger. There was strength and intelligence hidden behind her delicate appearance. He decided to ask the question that had been on his mind since last night. "Why are they chasing you?" "Who are they?" Lyra hesitated, biting her lower lip. "I am an outcast from my planet, my people. They saw me as a threat." Mark frowned, struggling to comprehend. "A threat? You how?" She looked down, shadows crossing her alien face. "I carry knowledge, information that could change power in my world. Some want me dead. Others want me captured, and I cannot return until it is safe." Mark felt a chill, realizing that this woman in his living room carried secrets far beyond human understanding. "And why come here? Why my home?" he asked, puzzled. Lyra looked at him with eyes full of sincerity. "I sensed kindness here. Your home, it felt safe. I had no other choice." Mark's heart softened. Knowing that her desperation was real, he walked closer, examining the faint lines on her skin which pulsed softly, almost like circuits beneath her flesh. "They're trackers," Lyra whispered, "left behind by my pursuers. They can find me anywhere. That's why I must move carefully." Mark touched her hand gently. "I will help you. I won't let them take you." Lyra's eyes shone with gratitude, a tear forming but quickly wiped away. I did not expect this. Humans usually turn away." Mark smiled faintly, feeling proud and worried at the same time. "I am not like most humans," he said, trying to sound brave. "You can trust me." Lyra studied him silently, then nodded, a faint smile forming. I will try." Mark could see that she was trying to trust him, even though every instinct in her body screamed caution. They spent the day talking quietly, sharing stories of their lives, though hers was more complicated, filled with distant worlds, strange cultures, and dangers he could barely imagine. Mark listened intently, fascinated by her tales, feeling his mind expand beyond the small town he had always known. Lyra noticed his interest, her gaze softening. "I have never met a human who would listen like this." "Without fear?" Mark shrugged, a little embarrassed. "I guess I am different." As the sun climbed higher, Lyra showed him small things about her abilities, subtle movements and heightened senses. She could see faint energy currents, feel vibrations in the air, and even sense emotions in others nearby. Mark was amazed but careful not to make her uncomfortable. Realizing that her talents were both a blessing and a danger, he asked cautiously, "Can you teach me some of this?" Lyra considered, "Perhaps, but you must be careful. Even small knowledge can make you a target." Mark nodded. "I understand, but I want to help you survive." The day passed with small lessons and quiet moments, both learning from each other. Mark introduced her to human routines, cooking, cleaning, and simple games, while Lyra showed him ways to be aware, to notice things humans often missed by evening. Mark's daughters returned from their grandmother's home, running into the living room, surprised to see Lyra there. Lyra knelt, smiling softly. "Hello, don't be afraid. I am a friend." The girls approached slowly, curiosity winning over caution, and soon they were talking and laughing. Mark watched, realizing that despite her otherworldly nature, Lyra was connecting with his family, becoming part of their lives. As night fell, Lyra's expression grew serious again. "They will come soon. I can feel them." Mark's stomach tightened, but he remained calm. "Then we prepare. We will face them together." Lyra nodded, a small spark of hope in her eyes. "Together," she repeated, the word carrying promise and courage. Outside, shadows shifted and moved, hinting at the approaching danger, but inside, a bond was forming stronger than fear. Mark understood that protecting Lyra was not just about kindness anymore. It was about survival, courage, and something deeper he could not yet name. And as the night grew darker, both human and alien prepared for the challenges that would come with the dawn. The night was dark and silent, but Mark could feel the tension in the air. He had prepared the house, locking doors and windows, but his heart told him that danger was closer than ever. Lyra sat by the window, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, scanning the horizon. Her senses were sharper than any human's, and she could feel the presence of the hunters approaching. "They are near," she whispered, voice tense. "They have tracked me here. We must be ready." Mark nodded, gripping a wooden stick he had found, trying to appear calm for her and for himself. The girls were asleep upstairs, unaware of the silent threat outside, and Mark prayed they would remain safe. Lyra moved quickly, setting small traps around the house using wires, stones, and devices that hummed softly. Mark watched in awe, realizing that her alien knowledge turned everyday items into tools of survival. A faint sound rustled the trees, making Mark's heart jump. He whispered, "Did you hear that?" Lyra's eyes narrowed. "They are closer. Move quietly and stay hidden." Mark ducked behind the sofa as shadows shifted outside, elongated by the moonlight. Through the window, he saw strange figures gliding silently, almost like smoke, their forms alien and menacing. Mark's breath caught, but he reminded himself that fear was not an option. Lyra moved to the front door, her hands glowing faintly as she activated a shield that he could barely see. "They cannot come in without being noticed," she said softly. A hint of pride in her voice, Mark realized that she was not helpless. She had powers and skills beyond his understanding. The shadows outside paused, scanning for any sign of life, their strange devices scanning the ground and walls. Mark could feel the pulse of the energy from their tools, a cold, invasive sensation. He tightened his grip on the stick, ready to defend the house. His daughters and Lyra, suddenly, one of the hunters activated a device that emitted a faint beep, a warning signal that sent a shiver down his spine. Lyra reacted instantly, moving like liquid, placing small energy nodes that created illusions outside. The shadows hesitated, confused. Unsure of which direction to follow, Mark watched, amazed, as she used her alien technology to mislead them, turning fear into control. Minutes passed like hours, the night stretching endlessly, every rustle or snap of a twig setting Mark's heart racing. He felt the weight of responsibility more than ever, knowing that one mistake could cost Lyra her life. The hunters seemed to communicate silently, coordinating their movements, but Lyra anticipated each step. Countering with precision, Mark learned quickly, following her instructions, moving quietly to reinforce traps, blocking potential entrances. Together, human and alien formed a small but powerful team, blending instinct, strategy, and alien abilities. A sudden gust of wind blew through the trees, scattering leaves and debris, masking their movements. Lyra signaled to Mark to move the girls to a safer room, using the confusion to their advantage. He carried them quietly, whispering words of comfort, their tiny hands clutching his clothes tightly. Once safe, he returned to Lyra, feeling the bond of trust deepen. "We cannot stay here forever," Lyra said, her voice steady but urgent. "They will return. Stronger, faster, and more organized." Mark nodded, understanding the danger but also feeling a strange thrill, a surge of courage he had never known. The hunters outside tested every barrier, probing for weakness, but Lyra's preparations held. Mark could hear their faint, distorted voices through the night, speaking in a language he could not understand. Lyra glanced at him, eyes serious. "They are not like humans. They will not stop until they succeed." "We must be ready for anything," Mark swallowed, realizing the night was a lesson in patience, strategy, and courage. Time seemed to blur as they maintained their watch, listening to every sound, every movement. Lyra shared small tips with him, teaching him to sense vibrations, notice subtle changes, and anticipate danger. Mark followed closely, learning quickly, feeling more capable with each passing moment. The night stretched on, dark and unending, but slowly, the shadows outside began to retreat. Lyra exhaled softly. "They will return, but not tonight. We have survived this trial." Mark felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Knowing it was temporary but precious, he looked at Lyra, admiration and gratitude filling his heart. Despite the danger, he realized he was no longer alone. Lyra's presence had changed everything. Fear became determination. Uncertainty became strategy, and desperation became hope. Together, they had faced the unknown, fought invisible enemies, and survived. Mark knew that the days ahead would be even harder. But with Lyra's guidance and their trust in each other, they had a chance. As dawn approached, the first light of morning breaking the darkness, Mark allowed himself a moment to breathe. Lyra stood by the window, scanning the horizon one last time, then turned, a faint smile on her face. "Today we survived. Tomorrow we plan," she said, and Mark nodded, ready for whatever would come next. The bond between them had grown stronger, forged in fear, courage, and the silent promise that they would face the shadows together. The sun rose gently over the small town, casting golden light across Mark's house after the tense night of danger. The warmth of the morning felt like a fragile promise. Mark poured tea into cups, his hand steady but his mind restless. Lyra watched silently, sitting near the window, her eyes reflecting a world beyond human understanding. She had survived the night, but she knew that survival meant more than hiding. It meant learning, adapting and trusting. Mark offered her a cup, and she took it with a quiet nod, appreciating the simple gesture. The house felt alive in a new way. With laughter of birds outside and faint noises from the town below, Mark realized that life was fragile, yet filled with small joys, moments worth protecting. The girls returned for breakfast, eyes wide as they saw Lyra sitting at the table. "Who is she?" one whispered, curiosity mixing with excitement. Mark smiled. "She is a friend. A very special friend." Lyra extended her hand, gentle and calm. "Hello, do not be afraid. I am here to help." The girls approached slowly, hesitant but drawn by her soft voice and kind eyes. By the end of breakfast, they were laughing, asking questions about her hair, her eyes, and the strange patterns on her skin. Mark watched, feeling awe and relief, realizing that Lyra was not only alien but also capable of human connection. After the morning meal, Lyra suggested they take a walk around the property. To stretch and observe, Mark followed, noticing how her movements were fluid. Precise, almost like a dance, Lyra spoke softly about her world, sharing glimpses of floating cities, glowing rivers, and technology that humans could only dream of. Mark listened, fascinated, his mind stretching to imagine places he would never see. She taught him small things about awareness, how to notice faint vibrations in the air, subtle changes in temperature, and even shifts in emotional energy. Mark followed carefully, trying to absorb everything, realizing that knowledge could be a weapon, a shield, and a key. As they walked near the edge of the property, Lyra paused, looking out over the distant hills. "There is danger in the distance," she said quietly. "Not immediate, but approaching. We must always be ready." Mark nodded, a knot forming in his stomach, but he also felt a strange confidence, knowing he had learned from her, adapted in ways he never thought possible. Lyra smiled faintly, noticing the change in him. "You are learning quickly, human. Courage and awareness suit you." Mark chuckled softly. "I am learning from the best." She tilted her head, eyes serious. "It is not just learning. It is trust. And trust is stronger than fear." Mark felt the truth of her words in his chest, understanding that their bond went beyond words, beyond species. It was about survival, loyalty, and respect. The afternoon passed with lessons in both human and alien ways. Lyra showed him how to detect energy patterns invisible to most humans, and Mark taught her simple tricks of human observation and improvisation. They built small devices together, using parts from old machines and Lyra's alien tech, blending two worlds into one. Mark noticed the laughter of his daughters as they played nearby, their joy a reminder of what they were protecting. Lyra joined them, careful and gentle, teaching small games that blended curiosity and skill. The girls were fascinated, asking questions about her world and her powers, and she answered patiently, hiding only the most dangerous secrets. Mark watched the interactions, feeling a mixture of pride, hope, and awe. Even in a world filled with danger, there were moments of light, connection, and growth. As evening approached, Lyra stood by the window, looking out at the horizon. Her thoughts distant, Mark joined her, feeling a quiet sense of companionship. "Do you ever miss your world?" he asked softly. She nodded, eyes reflecting both longing and determination. "Yes, but I am learning that my place may be here. For now." Mark glanced at her, sensing the weight of her choices, the sacrifices she had made, and the courage it took to survive. They stood in silence, two beings from different worlds, bound by circumstance and growing trust. Mark realized that helping Lyra was no longer just about safety. It was about partnership, understanding, and a connection neither of them had expected. The night fell gently, stars appearing in the sky. Distant yet bright, Lyra looked up. They are still out there, watching, waiting. Mark tightened his grip on her hand. Then we will be ready. Together? Lyra smiled faintly, feeling warmth in his human gesture, understanding that survival meant more than hiding. It meant bonds. Courage and trust inside the house, preparations for the future were made quietly. Plans and strategies blending with moments of laughter and calm. Mark felt a strange peace, knowing that no matter what came, they had each other. The shadows outside hinted at danger, but the light inside, the bond they shared, was stronger than fear, and as they moved forward, human and alien, teacher and student, protector and protected, a new world of possibility opened before them, one that went beyond danger, beyond survival and toward connection, courage, and hope. The night had fallen once again, dark and heavy. Mark moved quietly through the house, checking every window and door, ensuring that everything was locked and secure. Lyra stood near the front window, her eyes scanning the distant shadows, sensing movements beyond human perception. "They are coming," she whispered, voice tight with urgency. "They know where I am. They will not wait this time." Mark felt his heart race, but he kept his face calm, for the sake of the girls upstairs. He gathered some old tools and sticks, creating makeshift weapons, while Lyra prepared small devices that hummed softly with alien energy. The wind carried strange sounds through the trees, rustling leaves and whispering secrets that made Mark uneasy. He glanced at Lyra, noticing how calm and precise she was, her presence steadying his nerves. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared at the edge of the property. Moving slowly and deliberately, Mark squinted. "What is that?" Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Hunters. They are using light to find heat signatures. They are close." The shadows moved with eerie coordination, almost as if they could think together, communicate without words. Mark realized that these were not ordinary enemies, they were relentless. Intelligent and dangerous, Lyra whispered instructions, pointing to key positions around the house. "You stay here. Place the traps. I will engage them if they come too close," Mark nodded, adrenaline coursing through his veins, feeling a mix of fear and determination. From the darkness, the hunters began to advance, strange devices scanning, their glowing eyes piercing the night. Lyra activated her shields, invisible barriers that distorted light and sound. Confusing the hunters, Mark watched in awe as she moved like a shadow, placing energy nodes and activating devices with speed and precision. The hunters hesitated, confused by the sudden illusions, but they quickly adapted. Probing from different angles, Mark joined her outside, moving silently, reinforcing traps, blocking potential entry points. The first hunter stepped forward, a tall, alien figure with glowing armor and a weapon that emitted pulses of energy. Lyra reacted instantly, throwing a small device that created a blinding light, causing the hunter to stagger back. Mark swung a heavy stick at another, catching it by surprise, his human strength combining with Lyra's alien strategies. The hunters regrouped, coordinating their attack, but Mark and Lyra anticipated every move, countering with clever tricks and devices. The night air was filled with strange sounds, beeps, hums, and the soft crash of objects hitting the ground. Mark could hear the girls crying softly upstairs, and his heart clenched, motivating him to fight harder. Lyra moved with grace, her glowing hands manipulating energy fields that repelled the hunters. One hunter tried to flank them, moving silently, but Mark noticed the faint vibrations in the ground and alerted Lyra. She dispatched him with a precise strike, energy pulses sending the hunter back into the shadows. The battle continued, relentless and tense. Testing both human courage and alien skill, Mark realized that they could not fight forever. They needed a plan to survive the night. Lyra whispered, "We will lure them to the traps. Once they are caught, we escape to the forest." "Move quickly." Mark followed, setting the final traps and creating distractions to confuse the hunters. The alien figures stumbled into the devices, energy nets and illusions trapping them temporarily. Mark and Lyra ran through the backyard, leading the hunters away from the house. They reached the forest edge, hidden by thick trees and shadows, hearts pounding with exhaustion and relief. Lyra paused, looking back at the house. "It is safe for now, but they will return stronger." Mark nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "Then we must be ready. We cannot let them catch us unprepared." The girls peeked from the window. Seeing the distant flashes of light from the trapped hunters, Mark waved at them, trying to hide the fear and exhaustion in his face. "We are okay. Stay inside," Lyra touched his arm gently. "You were brave. Human courage is remarkable," Mark smiled faintly. "I had a good teacher." They returned to the house, carefully avoiding the remaining hunters. Inside, the air was thick with tension, but also relief. They had survived the first strike. Lyra set new alarms and protective fields, preparing for the next encounter, while Mark checked the girls and reinforced barricades. The night was long, filled with whispers, movement and anticipation, but for the first time, Mark felt a strange confidence. They had faced the hunters together and survived, learning that courage, intelligence, and trust could overcome even the deadliest foes. Lyra glanced at Mark, her eyes softening. "Tonight we survived. Tomorrow we plan. We prepare for what they will do next," Mark nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the strength of their bond. The hunters outside were patient and relentless, but inside the small house, human and alien stood together, ready for the trials ahead. And as the night stretched on, both knew that their journey had only begun. Danger was far from over, but hope, courage, and trust burned brighter than fear, guiding them toward the battles yet to come. The house was quiet, the echoes of the previous night's battle still lingering in the corners. Mark sat at the table, rubbing his tired eyes, while Lyra stood by the window, gazing into the distance. The girls were asleep upstairs, safe for now, but the danger that had followed Lyra was far from over. Mark broke the silence. "Lyra, I need to understand. Why are they after you? What is so important about you?" Lyra turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting moonlight and pain. "I carry knowledge that could change the balance of power on my planet." Mark frowned, trying to comprehend. "Knowledge? You mean secrets, technology? Something like that?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, but it is not just technology. It is the way to protect, to save lives, and also the way to destroy." Mark felt a chill, realizing the weight of her words. "And if they capture you, they could use it to harm countless others." Lyra swallowed, looking down. "Exactly. That is why I must remain hidden. That is why I ran to you. You offered safety without expecting anything in return." Mark leaned back, feeling the burden of responsibility pressing on him. "Then we must plan carefully. You cannot stay here forever." Lyra approached the table, placing her glowing hand lightly on his. "I know. But for now we prepare. We build defenses and we learn to trust each other." Mark nodded. "I trust you, and I will protect you and my daughters. No matter what." Lyra's eyes softened, a hint of relief and warmth showing through the usual seriousness. For the next hours they strategized, blending human ingenuity with alien technology. Mark suggested reinforcing doors, creating hidden exits, and setting up distractions to mislead pursuers. Lyra added her knowledge of energy fields, motion sensors, and ways to manipulate perception. Together they mapped out safe zones, escape routes, and contingency plans in case the hunters returned stronger. The process was intense, requiring patience, trust, and precise timing, but both felt the growing connection between them. Mark realized that this was more than survival. It was teamwork, partnership, and mutual respect. At one point, Lyra paused, her gaze distant. "Mark, I did not choose to leave my world, but perhaps this place, these humans, can teach me something about courage and hope." Mark looked at her, understanding the vulnerability beneath her alien exterior. "And I never thought I would meet someone like you. Someone who changes everything I believed about life." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then we change it together, one step at a time." They spent the rest of the evening reinforcing their plans, marking weak points and creating signals to warn each other of incoming danger. Mark learned to read subtle shifts in energy, while Lyra observed human habits and small tricks that could give them an advantage. As night deepened, Lyra finally spoke, her voice low and serious. "Mark, there is something you must understand. My pursuers will not stop. They are patient and relentless. We must make a choice." Mark leaned forward, heart heavy. "A choice? What kind of choice?" Lyra's eyes met his, unwavering. "We can continue hiding, moving from place to place, always running, or we can confront them, strike back strategically, and reclaim some control." Mark exhaled, weighing the danger. "And if we confront them, the risk is high. We could lose everything." Lyra nodded. "Yes, but hiding forever is not living, and I have seen fear destroy more lives than courage ever will." Mark felt the truth in her words, realizing that survival was not just about avoiding danger, but about action, strategy, and choice. He made a decision, steady and firm. Then we fight smart. We protect each other, my daughters, and your knowledge. We prepare to face them, but carefully, not recklessly. Lyra's eyes glowed softly, approval and trust shining through. Good. That is why I stayed here. I knew you could make the right choice. The hours passed as they finalized their strategies, combining human intuition and alien foresight. They discussed contingencies, signals, and what to do if the worst happened. Every detail planned with care. Mark realized that he had changed too. No longer just a human protecting his family, but a partner in something larger. Something that spanned worlds. Lyra studied him silently, noticing the growth in his courage, his awareness, and his willingness to embrace the unknown. By dawn, their plans were complete, temporary safety reinforced, and the bond between them stronger than ever. Mark finally allowed himself a moment to rest, sitting quietly beside Lyra, feeling both fear and hope. Lyra placed her hand on his shoulder, a simple gesture, yet full of meaning. We are ready as we can be. Mark nodded, glancing out the window at the pale light of morning. Then we face whatever comes together. Lyra smiled faintly. Together, she repeated, and in that single word, promise, courage, and trust were sealed outside. The shadows still lingered, watchers in the distance, but inside the small house, human and alien had made a choice to fight, to protect, and to face the dangers of a universe that was bigger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And as the first light of day touched the walls, Mark and Lyra knew that tomorrow would bring challenges. But they were ready, their bond unbroken and their resolve unshakable. The morning light filtered gently through the curtains, painting Mark's small house in warm hues of gold and orange. After nights of fear, battles, and tense planning, the quiet of dawn felt like a fragile gift. Mark sat at the table, sipping tea slowly. Letting the calm moment sink in, Lyra stood near the window, her silver hair catching the first rays of sunlight. Eyes thoughtful, distant yet peaceful. The girls were awake, laughter echoing softly from upstairs, their smiles and chatter a reminder of the life they were protecting. Mark watched them, feeling a strange mix of pride, relief, and cautious hope. Lyra turned from the window, noticing the look in his eyes. Your daughters are remarkable, she said softly. They are brave, curious, and full of hope. Mark smiled faintly. They learned from you too. You've shown courage in ways they will never forget. Lyra's gaze softened, her expression warm. Perhaps we have all learned from each other. For the first time since her arrival, there was no fear, only a quiet bond between human and alien, teacher and partner, protector and protected. Mark realized that Lyra had become more than a guest. She was a part of their lives, a bridge between worlds, and a symbol of courage as the day progressed. Small routines returned, blending normal human life with the extraordinary presence of Lyra. She helped the girls with simple tasks, teaching them about her world in playful ways. Blending learning with fun, Mark prepared meals, Lyra assisting with careful hands, her alien knowledge bringing efficiency and precision. Even the house felt different, alive with laughter, warmth, and the quiet hum of energy that Lyra brought with her presence. Despite the calm, Mark knew that danger had not vanished completely. The hunters still existed, lurking somewhere in the distance. But for now, the small family was safe, and that was enough. Lyra approached Mark quietly. We should consider the future, she said, voice gentle but firm. Hiding forever is not living. We must prepare for what comes next. Mark nodded, understanding the weight of her words. I agree. We survive, we protect, and we learn. Together, they discussed plans for defense, training the girls in small ways to be aware, cautious, and clever. Lyra shared knowledge that could help them survive and adapt, while Mark offered human ingenuity and practical solutions. Through these shared tasks, their bond grew stronger, built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. Mark realized that the nights of fear had transformed into days of hope, and the unknown had become a shared adventure. Lyra glanced at him, her eyes softening. You have changed too, Mark. Courage, patience, and trust. These are not just my lessons. You embody them, he chuckled softly. I had a good teacher, and my daughters remind me every day why we fight, why we survive. As evening approached, they gathered together in the small living room. The girls playing quietly, Mark watching with a sense of calm. Lyra joined them, teaching small games, blending curiosity and skill, laughter filling the room, replacing the tension that had haunted the nights. Mark felt a sense of completeness, a fragile but powerful connection bridging worlds, species and hearts. He realized that this strange, alien woman had brought more than danger and mystery. She had brought hope, companionship, and courage for Lyra. The warmth of human connection was new, unexpected, and comforting. She had come seeking safety, but she found trust, friendship, and perhaps a home. Mark and Lyra stood together by the window as the stars appeared one by one in the night sky. They looked out, silent but united, knowing that challenges would come, dangers would return, but together they could face them. "The world is big, strange, and sometimes cruel," Lyra said softly, "but we can find strength in each other, in trust, in courage." Mark nodded, feeling the weight and truth of her words. "We do not face it alone, and we will protect what we love no matter what." The girls joined them, climbing onto their laps, small hands holding tightly, their innocence a reminder of why they fought and survived. Lyra smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had not known for years. "Perhaps this is a new beginning. For all of us," Mark squeezed her hand gently, "a beginning where we face the future together. As a family, no matter what worlds we come from outside." The night was calm, shadows receding, but the lessons of courage, trust, and resilience remained. Inside, warmth, laughter, and love filled the house, replacing fear and doubt. Mark looked at Lyra and his daughters, feeling hope stronger than ever before. He understood that the nights of danger had forged a bond unbreakable, a connection that would guide them through challenges yet to come. Lyra placed her hand on his shoulder, eyes reflecting trust and gratitude. "Together, we will face whatever comes next," Mark nodded. "Together," he repeated, and in that single word, promise, hope, and strength were sealed. The small house on the edge of the town became more than a shelter. It became a home, a bridge between worlds, and a symbol of courage and new beginnings. And as the stars shone above, human and alien, daughters and protector, faced the future with hearts brave, minds sharp, and spirits unyielding.